My guest today is well-known political activist and former Saphologist, Professor Yogendra Yadav. He's been in news recently after he threatened to sue NCERT, which designs curriculum and syllabus as well as textbooks. This after allegations of NCERT saffronizing textbooks. Now, we'll also pose questions to Mr. Yadav about Lok Sabha election results and also what can be expected in the assembly elections over the next few months. Before I go across to him, a quick appeal from all of us here at the News Minute. We've been able to continue with our independent journalism because of viewers and readers like you. Do consider becoming a paid TNM subscriber if you're not one already, and also consider contributing to our reporting fund.
Mr. Yadav, I want to first thank you for joining us. It's great to have you on the News Minute. And we hope to unpack a whole bunch of things. But I want to start with the NCERT. You have threatened to sue them if they do not remove your name as the chief advisor. You're a former chief advisor. Tell us what led to this situation.
I mean, this is a funny situation, isn't it? Normally, all the disputes about book authorship are about claiming authorship. You know, people say, you've taken away my authorship. I want my name on this. And isn't it a funny situation? We are saying we don't want our name on it. Do what you like with those books. Just don't put our names on it. And the NCERT, in its supreme wisdom, says, no, we shall put your names on a book that you don't approve of, a book that we have distorted, the book that we have changed, but we shall have your names on it. I mean, this is absurd, funny, bizarre. The story is as follows. This is about 6 books that were written during 2005, 6, and 7. These are the NCERT textbooks for class 10 and 9 and 10. 1 book each. This is compulsory textbook that every student, even those who study science, have to take. And then there are 4 books, 2 each for class 11 and 12, which are prescribed for students who opt for political science as their discipline. Professor Suhas Parshikar and I were involved in our capacity as chief advisor. Chief advisor in NCERT lingo meant chief editor. You know, people who were finally responsible for ensuring that the textbook is okay. So we were involved in inviting people who would write chapters. It was our responsibility to prune, edit, if necessary, rewrite those chapters, and to give the final finished product to the NCERT, which was then published. These books started, came into being around gradually in 2005, then 6 and 7. And the books have been in existence now, as you can see, in some cases for 18, 19 years. There were minor tinkering with the books. There were controversies about the books. In 2008, 9, 10, textbooks are controversial. That's all right. These things happen. We protested. All that stuff happened. But after 2014, something important started happening. Instead of public dispute, where the authors and editors had some right to respond, they started doing unilateral tinkering with those textbooks. It started with removing a few sentences, one phrase here or there, concealing one information, and you can imagine which kind of information. These books tried to give a fairly balanced account of what happened in India, Indian politics. They started tinkering with that. In the last 2 or 3 years, the tinkering went much ahead. They started deleting chapters altogether, started instructing the following chapters shall not be taught, etc. Then they started not only deleting, but also inserting things. So last year, June last year, exactly a year ago, Professor Parshikar and I came to the conclusion that now so much of mutilation of these textbooks has happened that we don't want our names on it. Now, each of these books carries our names. There is a page which identifies, because there are no authors in that sense. The book identified, these were the chief advisors, and this was the textbook committee for each book, which includes not just us, includes some of the most distinguished political scientists of the country. And that's one identification. Secondly, in each of these books, There is a letter penned by Professor Palshikar and me addressed to the teachers, students, and parents. It's a very personalized letter to them. We said, please remove our names from these two places. Do what you like. Now, look at the response of NCERT. And instead of responding to our letter, which was written in June last year, NCERT issued kind of a public statement, quietly publishing it on their website, not even addressing us, which said we are the copyright owners of these books, a fact that we've not even disputed. It says that it is our privilege. NCERT can update and improve these books as it likes. Incidentally, we had not questioned that very much. And it says we have put their names only as a form of acknowledgement of the contribution made by them. We were saying, thank you very much for your generosity. We don't want it. Now, this happened last year, and it was not just the two of us. 26 other political scientists, some of the best known names in the discipline of political science, also wrote to say, yes, our names should also be removed. These books are no longer the books we wrote. Please remove our names from that. Not only NCERT did not do it last year, they could have claimed, they could have pleaded practical difficulties. They could have said, all right, the books are already in publication. We cannot remove it now. It will cost us too much money. We'll remove it from website. Give us 1 year to remove it. All this was quite all right. But what they do is not only they did not do it last year, this year again they come out with a new edition, again put our names. And funnily, those who do not want to claim authorship are being named, and those who have actually done the tinkering, those who've actually done the distortion, or what looks to me as distortion and complete dilution and transformation of those books, they have not been named. I mean, we are simply saying, please give the credit to those who've done it. Don't give the credit to us. So the strange situation, the irony of the situation is that it is a very different kind of dispute. And the NCERT basically, and we have no other option except to assume, I mean, either you have to assume that they have a sense of humor, or you have to assume that they want to hide behind our names. They want some of the better known names of the discipline of political science to continue to legitimize the stuff which is completely illegitimate. There is no other way of reading what is happening here.
I want to just ask you for your opinion on why all these changes have been made, because some of them are funny at best. Not naming Babri Masjid, calling it just a nameless 3-dome structure, or saying 1,000 people died in the Godhra riots, in the violence. Not even talking about removing the term 1,000 people, mostly Muslims, died, which is what was there in the previous textbooks. Can you see a correlation, a clear one, between these changes and the political party that is in power currently, that is the BJP?
That goes without saying. I mean, the whole thing is being right from 2014-15 onwards, when they started tinkering. Every single change that was made has been to the liking of the current regime. First, they began by removing a reference to the Gujarat riot. The reference was not our statement. It was a statement of the National Human Rights Commission, which the book has simply reproduced. That was removed. Then they started removing other things which are inconvenient. For example, the fact that, the person who assassinated Mahatma Gandhi had an RSS connection, and that ideology was shared, and things of that kind. They started removing all those things. So all the changes that have been made are either directly those which trouble the regime, or the other set of changes are those indirect changes that are not quite keeping with the ideology of the regime. For example, they took the pretext of COVID and said, because of COVID, we have to rationalize the syllabus, because the justification offered by the NCERT has been twofold. Number one, we are rationalizing. These books are too big. We are cutting it down. Now, the books were not big for 10 years, but they've suddenly become too big. And what do they take out? They take out human rights. They take out social movements. They take out any discussion of secularism. They take out anything to do with diversity. Now, this is very selective taking out. The second claim they make is updating. We are updating the books. Updating in the light of what? There is a book on international relations which seriously needed updating. There are so many instances in the books where the facts mentioned are 20-year-old, which need to be updated. None of them has been updated. For example, in one place, the book says, no woman has been the president of India so far. Now, that's a 20-year-old fact. Needs updating. They don't update those things. But they update things in the name of updating. Clearly, they are doing things which are convenient to the regime. Now, the important thing that I want to underline is, someone could say, all right, a new regime has come, they want textbooks to their liking. But that is not what textbook writing was all about. When we wrote those textbooks in 2005, 6, and 7, the textbooks are replete with instances of things that were very, very inconvenient to the then ruling party, namely the Congress and the UPA. For example, we introduced a new book called Politics in India Since Independence. So the book begins with the partition of India and brought things till 2004-5. The book has a chapter on emergency, a chapter that describes everything that was wrong with emergency. It describes the fact that emergency was brought in through a dubious constitutional mechanism, that the Prime Minister of India had not convened the Council of Ministers before declaring it. It talks about the excesses of emergency. It talks about the Rajan torture case. It talks about Turkman Gate. I mean, everything that was sordid about emergency has been described because we thought it is our duty to tell the future generations as to what happened. The book talks about 1984 and the pogrom, in a sense, against the Sikhs, and it talks about 2002, the large-scale killings of Muslims. These are not just riots; these are one-sided violence targeted at a community. And as you can see, the book describes these things irrespective of the regime in place. Because the challenge that Professor Parshikar and I had was, how do we describe the history of post-independence India? How do we make a future citizen of India aware of a history which is neither awkward and embarrassed about discussing things that we ought to know, and which is also not partisan, does not favor one political party, does not favor one regime, which is what these textbooks did. And the trouble is that the book retains, for example, the book still retains the reference to the anti-Sikh violence of 1984, which should be known, but it removes the reference of 2002. Now, that is the kind of stuff which is taking place. So books which were balanced, books which were very carefully designed not to favor any regime or any ideology, except the ideology of the Constitution, which was our guiding spirit. Those books are now being tinkered with in this respect. And that's why we are saying this is unacceptable to us.
What do you make out of the defense put up by the NCERT director? He said that they don't want to raise, future citizens who are depressed and possibly violent. How do you respond to that?
The word he uses is children. Now that's please do remember that this book is written for class 12 students who opt for political science and who are going to study humanities or liberal arts later. Please remember that most of them are 18-year-old. Please also remember that in this country, those who are 18-year-old are allowed to vote. So we are speaking to citizens of this country who have the right to vote. So those who have the right to vote, should they not have the right to know? So number one, please don't think that these are nursery kids. This infantilization of students who are adults is something very serious. The other thing is that there are two paradigms. There used to be a paradigm of thinking about politics. And if you remember, I don't know about you, but in my generation, it was called civics. So political science, politics, the word was shunned. No, you don't talk about politics. civics. And civics was all about giving you all kinds of relevant and irrelevant details of the Constitution of India, which you were supposed to mug up, article this, article that, etc. Things that no one in this country knows. You were supposed to know those things. The exact mechanism through which the President of India is elected. And I bet most of the MPs would not know that mechanism. The student of class 9 was supposed to mug it up. We removed all that stuff and we said, no, that, we're not. So in the earlier days, the model of civics teaching was A, to shun politics, B, load you with information which is technical, legal, and C, give you a moralizing perspective on what it means to be a citizen. A citizen should be someone who is obedient, who's conscious of his or her duties, is never asking questions. Now, that's one perspective. And that is why civics books used to be some of the most boring things in school education. These books were based on a very different perspective. The perspective was, we are in democracy. This is no longer a colonial regime. We don't want to teach civics. We want to teach politics. In democracy, politics is the heart of democracy. So let's talk about politics. Talk about politics in a way which is non-partisan, not partisan to any party and not favoring any party. Number two, let us not hide things from students which they would know anyway. Now, if you are a Sikh and you study in a school, you would in any case know that there was something that happened in 1984, something very painful, something very shameful happened in this country in 1984. If the textbook keeps silence about it, it doesn't mean that you would never get to know. You would of course know about it, but you would know it in a very distorted and in a very limited way. So please do not think that children get all their information only from textbook. Children get that information anyway. 2002, what happened, all these things would be known. What the textbook can do is to give you a very fair description of what happened, so that the child has an alternative narrative. The child also knows the truth. The child also gets to get a fair picture. And while talking of violence or riots or whatever, they also get to know what are the ways in which these things get settled. After all, there was enormous violence in Punjab in the late 80s and early 90s. And then it was resolved. So the books also tell the story of resolution. So the idea that, number one, the idea that books are full of describing violence is a stupid idea, because these people may not have read the books. And I would really urge the NCERT director to please read the books that he's talking about. Number two, the idea that you should somehow erase these things from the mental register of the student. It's a ridiculous idea. These are outdated pedagogies. These pedagogies about 50-year-old. Children are not empty boxes. These are not infants. Let's learn to deal with them. Let's respect them. Let's get them to handle difficult, awkward questions. Let's teach them how to handle awkward situations. This is like gender. There was a time when, school books, schools and everyone encouraged people not to talk about gender, not to talk about sexual harassment, for example. And now we have reached a stage where we know that talking about this is the best way of handling it. Talking, training, socializing both boys and girls about how to handle these things. This is what these textbooks are doing in the case of citizens.
I want to move on to the results of the 2024 Lok Sabha elections. Even as I congratulate you on getting it right, you were the closest in terms of numbers. I want to look at some of the observations that you've made. In one article that you wrote for the print, you said that the results are not a ringing endorsement of secularism. Can you elaborate on why you think this is the case?
Thank you. I thought our conversation was mainly about the NCERT, but on this particular issue, I think in one way, the result is a great relief for the vision of secular India, because a political party which is out to dismantle secular structure of our constitution has been halted. That despite such crude and low-grade propaganda, rhetoric, vitriolic unleashed by the prime minister, the people did not give in to this. So yes, that's a great news, and that does strengthen secular potentials of this country. But let us not rush into assume that the task of defense of secularism has been done. No, no, we've just begun it. Let us not assume that the poison, the Hindu-Muslim poison, which has been deepened in this country in the last few decades, especially in the last 1 decade, that has been treated. No, it's not been treated. It's a very, very long journey. So in that article, we look at the evidence. And while people have decided not to foreground the communal question while voting, which is a great thing, but communal sentiments, majoritarian beliefs have not disappeared. And it is going to be a very long, drawn out battle to recover some of these things. And let's not get complacent.
The CSDS findings do throughout one thing, that Ram Mandir was not much of a factor in Uttar Pradesh. Do you agree with this, number one? And two, in an assembly election setting, do you think this would be applicable there as well, or Hindutva communalism could possibly come back to the fore at the time?
There's no question of agreeing or disagreeing with the findings. I mean, these are findings, and these are findings done by a fairly robust survey, which in many ways sets the gold standards of survey research in India. So I would only say that when I was traveling in Uttar Pradesh, I sensed something like this. People said, "Ha, mandir ban gaya, achhi baat hai." You know, they were not saying, this was not a secular response to say, why, what was the prime minister doing in Ayodhya? No, that's what they were not saying that. But they were saying, "Acha ban gaya na, ab dusri baat karo." Talk about unemployment, talk about inflation, talk about the real issues. So yes, the people did not foreground this issue over and above other issues, which is of course a great thing. It is too early to assume that these issues have disappeared, that they may not make a comeback in the next couple of years, and not just in Uttar Pradesh, in other places as well. And mind you, the current regime would not leave any stone unturned to bring these issues back in the public domain. कुछ ना कुछ तो खुराफात होगी यूपी इलेक्शन से पहले, है ना? So that's why I'm saying, let's not get complacent. We've got a foothold to work hard, but the task of defending a secular republic, which is to convince the citizen of India, including the dominant majority of Hindus, that secularism is in the interest of every single citizen of this country. That's a point. That's a long battle. We should not assume that the battle has been even substantially won as of now.
What can we expect in the assembly elections that are coming up? The first big one would be Maharashtra later this year. The kind of setback that BJP has seen, although the nature of a Lok Sabha election and assembly election will be very different, can you see that getting carried forward in these assembly elections also? Will that be the large mood for the elections?
One thing I decided after these elections and announced in public was that I shall never make another forecast. I had to make it. I was forced into it. I don't like doing it. But because mainstream media was simply so propagandized, and they were simply giving a false picture, which was affecting the election outcome itself. That's why I had to step in and say those things. So the last thing I want to do is to make another forecast. I really hope I don't need to. It's the job of media. It's the job of pollsters, not the job of a political worker like me. All I would say is that the election results of Maharashtra give the MVA a very, very strong footing. The India coalition, which is called the Mahavikas Aghadi in Maharashtra. It is kind of settled that the real Shiv Sena is the Uddhav Thackeray Shiv Sena, and the real NCP is Sharad Pawar's NCP. With that, they have a very strong footing, provided they keep the alliance and provided they They do not stop working. In Haryana, once again, uh, the outcome may be five seats, but actually it's a huge boost to the Congress party, and Congress is very well placed to take on the BJP. I would say Congress is the front runner right now. What it has to ensure is that the BJP would try and turn this election into a Jat versus non-Jat election. BJP plays Hindu-Muslim in some places. It plays other kind of division in other places. In Haryana, it will try to make it Jat versus non-Jat. So Congress has to ensure that the non-Jat voters who voted for it this time stay with it. They have to really make an effort to do so. In Jharkhand, uh, the BJP is ahead of India coalition to begin with. But one thing is quite clear: the Adivasis have clearly sided with the India coalition, and if the opposition works hard and tries to overcome some of the limitations that they have in Jharkhand, Jharkhand is also a winnable election. So, in principle, all the three elections are winnable for the opposition. Whether they do it or not, we have to watch and see.
If I could just sneak in one more question on the results, because we are from the south, I want to know what your thoughts are on BJP doing reasonably well in the south. It's usually there's this perception of it's a difficult terrain for the BJP, but we've seen that they've not performed too badly in Karnataka, and in all the other four states they have increased their vote share, their seat share, all of it. So what do you make out of that?
Karnataka is a repetition of BJP's earlier track records. It's slightly worse than what BJP tended to do in the Lok Sabha elections. But in other places, and in Kerala, let's not forget that RSS has been a very long-standing presence in Kerala. BJP's has done better in terms of vote share with one, then they've opened their account. In Tamil Nadu, BJP has no seats, but their vote share has indeed gone up, which should be taken note of. And in Andhra Pradesh, though BJP's votes are not really BJP's votes, these are more votes on loan from TDP. All in all, two things. Number one, it alerts us to the fact that BJP's challenge is to be taken seriously. BJP is a BJP today has more of a national footprint than even the Congress. I can't think of any state of India where BJP does not have vote share which is in double digits. That's a very substantial presence, so we should acknowledge. And for those who see BJP as a challenge to our democracy and our republic, as I indeed do, it's a reminder that the challenge has got deeper. Although the overall verdict has been negative for them, it's a political and moral defeat for the BJP, but it's being entrenched is a challenge. But I should end by pointing out one silver lining in this, which is, in one sense, if you step back and look at the long-term trajectory of Indian democracy and Indian republic and India as a nation, you should actually be happy that BJP has developed some vested interest in South India. I was frankly quite worried because the manner in which the North-South split was happening and was being played out, and with the dangers of the delimitation, reapportionment of seats taking place, I was beginning to worry about whether it could lead to a deep North-South divide in this country. And my fear was that because it suited the BJP might wish to push it further, the divide. But now that BJP has vested interests in South India, I think and hope that BJP would not wish to push the North-South divide anymore. And that's actually very good news for the Republic of India.
So one last question before we just end the conversation on the role of media. Do you see that changing, improving? And by media, here only I'm talking about the mainstream media. Do you see that with the curtail numbers of the BJP, do you see them questioning those in power a little bit more, being a little more balanced perhaps?
You're a better judge. As you rightly said, the role of mainstream media has been abominable, shameful. This is media is more of a problem for our democracy. Mainstream media, we should always acknowledge the exceptions, not only small news houses like yours, like The Wire or others. Also, some mainstream channels, like mainstream newspapers like The Hindu, the Indian Express, Telegraph, to some extent Deccan Herald. Some of these newspapers and many regional newspapers tried to strike a balance, but except them, mainstream media, especially television media, especially Hindi television media, has been exceptionally shameful. This is a the if as and when the history of Indian media is written, the chapter on 2019 to 2024 would be like the chapter on emergency that we wrote in our textbook. This is not a period that anyone would feel particularly good about. It's a shameful chapter of our democracy. Will it change? I really sincerely hope it will. Has it changed? I'm not a very good judge, and sitting where I do, I don't think I can judge it very well. I do notice a slight shift in some of the editorials that are being written. I do see. Look, let me put it like this. I do not expect the kind of darbari culture to end very soon. The BJP has too much of control, not of the journalists, but of the media owners. Too much of vested interests are at stake. So I do not expect a U-turn on the Darbari culture, on being on psychophancy. But the media did not do just psychophancy. They actually went after the opposition like a pack of wolves. I hope that would probably be moderated. They may not stop doing chamchagiri for the government and the ruling party, but at least they would moderate targeting the opposition the manner in which they did earlier. That much one should realistically hope. But I don't want to be over optimistic on that, especially because I think people like you have a much better understanding and knowledge of what's happening in news industry than I do.
Right. I thank you for your time and thank you for joining us. It was a great conversation on a whole host of things. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.